On the 3rd of May 2023 at 3 PM GMT, the countdown for the launch of the much anticipated Revelot R10 Admiral GMT, a watch which generated a huge stir of interest in several watch communities online, finally hit zero. Now, early birds were quick to flock to the site and very quickly snapped up the early bird pre-order rates, and sales are now continuing to grow for their second stage of their pre-order promotion ahead of a rollout in July or August 2023. Today, we're looking at the R10 Admiral GMT as we take the macro lens to specifically the Arctic White colorway to hopefully help those who are still thinking about pulling the trigger on this watch, and also those who may have already pre-ordered, to showcase exactly what you're going to get. And stick around as I take the Revelot R10 Admiral GMT on the beautiful Ingleborough cave and nature trail before heading for a quick stop at the Ribblehead Viaduct, both in the stunning Yorkshire Dales here in sunny old England, in my usual walkabout at the end of my vid. As ever, it's great to have you here. Now let's look at the specification of the R10 Admiral GMT, all in the next 90 seconds. Revelot started their journey back in 2017, with the name Revelot a marriage between the word revel, to celebrate, and zealot, a person who is fanatical in pursuing their ideals. And they are a microbrand that now, some 6 years later, have a decent product range that caters for both male and female, with, for me, the R11 Darkside Bronze Meteorite the hero product for the guys. But this release, the R10 Admiral GMT, takes inspiration from the Littoral Combat Ship, which is a surface vessel designed for military operations near shores, and you'll see influences of that vessel all over this watch. But just to reiterate what was said in another mental and bonkers 90-second spec, the Revelot R10 Admiral GMT comes in at 13.5mm thick, including the anti-reflective sapphire glass, and I measured a 41.5mm case diameter, 49mm lug to lug, 22mm at the lug, with this quick release guide lock bracelet tapering down to 20mm at the signature clasp. Now, the case is very much inspired by the angular shape of that Littoral Combat Ship. It's 316L stainless steel and octagonal in shape, and has a brushed finish, which gives this appearance very much a military steel feel to it, I guess, and I must say does catch the light very well. You'll also find the screw down crown tucked away here at the 4 o'clock position, knurled patterned edging, which gives it a fantastic grip, and it does have the Revelot icon stamped into it. And just to note that the Revelot R10 Admiral GMT is water resistant up to 200 meters. And now for what I think is the biggest talking point, and that is the dial. Now, the dial is a really interesting dial, if not, for me, a little busy. This is a GMT watch, although for me, at first glance, I don't see it as a GMT watch and see it more primarily as a diver's watch. Now, I absolutely get that the littoral combat ship features hugely influence this to be primarily a GMT watch, but I'm just saying that at first glance for me, I saw it mainly as a diver's watch. Now, the GMT markings usually found on the bezel are here on the reort and do somewhat get lost against that bold and busy white dial. Now, all models have this crazy whirlpool dial, although this, being Arctic white, is more subtle than the other colourways. And that is surrounded by this fairly quirky indices / oddly shaped, I guess, chapter ring that sits on the outside of that whirlpool dial and at the foot of the rear hort, with the larger inverted triangles at 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock, and smaller ones at 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 and 11 o'clock, but the whole thing is applied onto that whirlpool dial. But I guess it all makes sense because this dial is actually inspired by a radar, and those hands are meant to resemble that of an aerial view of two combat ships, with both the hour and minute hands skeletonized towards the center, and the seconds hand is very thin, inspired by the PPI display found on radars. You've got the Revelot logo printed under the 12 o'clock position, with the product name, automatic status and the 200 meter water resistance spec just above the 6 o'clock position, which also, by the way, houses the date complication, this being white numerals on a black background, but production pieces will be vice versa. As mentioned, the GMT markers are found on a slightly slanted reort with the GMT hand in black featuring a white arrowhead. Again, looking a little lost for me, but I guess at least the arrowhead has some okay legibility against that GMT reort. And by the way, that dial sits under this anti-reflected sapphire crystal. That bezel is 120 click unidirectional bezel, brushed ceramic, black with white minute markers, numbers from 20 to 50 minutes in denominations of 10, and the colours are inverted from the 15-minute countdown. So very much a classic diver's bezel there, and one for me that speaks very boldly to you at first glance, making this watch appear at first glance as if it was predominantly a diver's watch. The bezel also sports this knurled pattern brush finishing, which I must say does give you very decent grip when rotating that bezel. In terms of lume, the Arctic White is full lume with Swiss Superluminova BGW9 all over it. It looks absolutely cool, and as you probably already know by now, the final production pieces will have even more layers of that lovely BGW9, and I have to say, this full lume and the lume on the bezel would, for me, if I was to choose an R10 Admiral GMT colourway, would definitely help me choose this particular colourway. Full lume is also available on the Dune Luminova Steel, and also the Glacier Luminova Steel. Now, the bracelet is a 316L stainless steel bracelet, 22mm at the lug, which tapers down to 20mm at the clasp. Now, this is a quick release bracelet, which is pretty cool if you've got big clumsy hands like me. It's also brushed and catches the light beautifully. It's secured by a pin and collar system instead of screws, and well, not so great if you do have those clumsy hands like me. Anyway, the final production model will have a slightly different logo on the clasp, but this clasp does feature a milled glide lock micro adjustment. For me, I don't know why more divers don't have ratchet style extensions to help out true divers when they've got their wetsuits on. Now, the movement is a Seiko NH34 with GMT and date, 21,600 beats per hour, 24 joules and up to 41 hours power reserve. Now, I'm personally not too disappointed with the choice of a NH34 movement that Revelot made, given the price, which you'll no doubt know and see in a minute. It is a workhorse and always favourable for me when a Microbrand uses the Seiko NH movements to keep that price point down, as opposed to going for a more premium movement, but only if it reflects in the price. Now, the caseback is a screw-down embossed solid caseback with this prototype featuring the swirl design that you'll find on the dial, logo slap bang in the middle, but the final production model will sport a 3D stamp. Now, on my 7.5-inch wrist it wears brilliantly, and personally looks pretty brilliant too. The Arctic White is probably my favourite colourway of the R10 range, but saying that, I do have a big personal preference towards white dialed watches. The knurled pattern on the bezel edge gives this that added depth of texture against the brushed steel case, and that bracelet for me is fairly comfortable and looks pretty cool too, I guess. Early bird discounts on this pre-order is done and dusted, with now the second stage of pre-orders up and running, pricing this Arctic White at a very, very exceptional price of $311 or £251 UK sterling, with the other full Lume, Dune and Glacier Luminova models priced the same, and the Molten, Darkside, Storm and Army Steel variants even less at 295 USDs, and that's a touch over 240 squids. And the Grey Storm Meteorite Steel at 412 USD, 335 UK sterling, and the Damascus Meteorite DLC priced at 802 USD or 650 UK sterling, with all those exchange rates in today's market. Keep a lookout though and stay tuned to their website, because those prices won't last forever, with retail pricing, while still fairly decent, something that you won't want to pay when such low pricing, even at stage 2 of their pre-order promotion being so low. I really do recommend you just get this nailed, bag it, and when it's finally released, just enjoy the fact that you've grabbed yourself a bargain for a great looking watch. Price aside, I really do like this watch, although there is a small part of me, a teensy tiny small part of me, most likely that ignorant part of me, and one that doesn't take watch functionality too seriously, that wishes it wasn't a GMT watch. I honestly do feel that the GMT functionality is a little lost in a busy dial, and without it would produce a more clean-cut design aesthetic. But that's just my own personal opinion, and it isn't at all a critique of this watch. I really do like pretty much all the designs of the R10 Admiral GMT series, with a preference towards the full Lume designs. I think they look fantastic, and wasn't at all surprised that they were the first to go at the early bird stage. It's also really nice to see a Microbrand being so innovative in their designs and attention to detail, but also creating a fairly large buzz in the Microbrand community. Good morning, R10 Admiral GMT.
The whole time you've been in primary school, yeah, boss, everyone's been lying to you. Why? Graphics not. You know those TikToks where it shows really cool places? Yeah. Something out there, there's like a seal or something. For finding it, you can start making stuff. The butt slap. The butt. Leo, why are you on the butt? I guess that's how it goes. This is what I've got to climb it. No, why would you? Oh my god, I thought I had to climb it. Pink ones are making stick. These ones aren't. These are showing sticks. Yeah, it's all in this.
See you later, R10 Admiral GMT.